Welcome to the webinar, All In for IAQ Preventive Maintenance, Key Strategies for Training Staff and Communicating Success. My name is Tracy Washington Inger, and I'm with the Indoor Environments Division of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and it is my pleasure to serve as your facilitator. This webinar is part of a free, ongoing professional training webinar series, all of which are available online to view at your convenience. The series was developed to address the specific areas school stakeholders in our network have committed to actively addressing in order to achieve dramatic results in health, academic, and building performance. As part of our ongoing webinar series, we have 5 webinars on indoor air quality preventive maintenance. These will help you to deepen your knowledge of IAQ preventive maintenance and learn firsthand from experts and other school staff. After completing the evaluation for each of our trainings, you can instantly access your certificate of completion. Another terrific tool you'll be hearing about today on this webinar is the school's IAQ Assessment mobile app. If you haven't done so already, please get your smart device, your phone or your tablet, and download this app to make your mobile device a one-stop shop for managing indoor air quality. During this webinar, you will hear specific ways the mobile app can help you organize, develop, and execute a proactive indoor air quality management plan that includes preventive maintenance. So during the webinar, you will hear how the Davis School District in Farmington, Utah is achieving remarkable academic and performance outcomes for their students and staff by instituting indoor air quality preventive maintenance policies and practices that provide optimal learning environments while reducing costs and protecting health. And more than that, you'll hear firsthand from multiple school district leaders how they recruit, train, and retain capable and committed teams across multiple departments to ensure that preventive maintenance activities are implemented successfully and consistently. They also will impart the communication strategies they use to guarantee coordination between these departments to increase compliance from occupants and to secure buy-in and support from top-level administrators. We know that staffing and communication are essential to executing a successful indoor air quality preventive maintenance plan. The Indoor Air Quality Tools for Schools Action Kit was designed to help schools build strong interdisciplinary indoor air quality teams with the communication and collaboration skills needed to identify, address, and prevent environmental health issues that negatively impact teaching and learning while implementing a comprehensive indoor air quality management plan. During this webinar, you will hear how you can use the checklists, sample policies, and other guidance resources in the kit to build, motivate, and sustain a winning team to start, sustain, or enhance your indoor air quality management program. The framework for effective school IAQ management helps school districts implement the kit using 6 key drivers and successful strategies for continuous improvement. The framework provides a common language to use to help us better understand what one another is doing. It's kind of a bit like a Rosetta Stone for IAQ. This webinar will highlight how you can employ the organize, communicate, and evaluate key drivers to engage a diverse team of stakeholders to invest in the development of preventive maintenance practices, policies, and procedures that complement your comprehensive IAQ management plans. So be sure to listen for the unique methods and devices Davis School District is using to assess their facilities and how they're using what they find in those assessments to further plan and prioritize their actions. And pay especially close attention to how the entire system at Davis is designed to masterfully deploy the strategies under the ACT key driver to not only train staff at every level to be successful, but also to recognize them as valued members of the educational team. In addition to the framework and the Action Kit offers 7 technical solutions. These are the major indoor air quality issues that the Action Kit and framework can be used to address in order to achieve reliable, clean, efficient, and healthy indoor environments in schools. Preventive maintenance features prominently in these technical solutions. So we're always kind of stressing the interdependent nature of the technical solutions. They all rely on each other in order to work. However, the functions of these 7 technical solutions often are housed in multiple departments in a school district, which means that those staff members have to learn how to work interdependently as well. The effort required to establish high-level coordination and communication between departments is well worth the investment, however. So given what we've learned in our work in helping schools proactively manage IAQ, we know that there's power in prevention. Implementing a proactive, predictive, preventive maintenance plan can help correct issues caused from deferred maintenance. And preventive maintenance can also form the basis for a program to help schools last longer, to save money, and provide a healthier environment. So our goal basically is to help school personnel take proactive rather than a reactive approach to indoor air quality management by establishing preventive maintenance measures that avert issues before they become big problems. Preventive maintenance has a tremendous range of benefits, and our focus is on that dynamic intersection between indoor air quality, preventive maintenance, and energy efficiency, and how to manage that relationship between these 3 areas to produce healthy, reliable, and efficient school buildings. So what you see in this image are some of the main areas of focus for preventive maintenance as it relates to indoor air quality in schools. So developing a solid plan and making a strong case for supporting preventive maintenance are the overarching pieces that connect the elements that specifically address indoor air quality that you see here in the middle. This webinar concentrates on how preventive maintenance is built on a foundation of strong staffing and solid communication. In this next diagram here, you see the 4 steps to develop and implement an indoor air quality preventive maintenance plan. As you listen to the team from Davis, you will hear that they are taking action on every one of these steps. But the main thing I want to encourage you to be attuned to here is the way that Davis has recognized how important staffing and communications are to the success of all the other steps, and how they have devised innovative ways to operationalize the teamwork that makes the dream work. In that effort, I'm really excited to introduce our first speaker, Craig Carter. Craig is the Assistant Superintendent and Business Administrator for Davis School District. While there, he has held a variety of positions, including Transportation Director, Administrator of Support Services, and Business Administrator. He has dedicated 22 years to public education in Utah. He has a BA in International Relations from Brigham Young University and an MBA in International Business from the University of South Carolina. Please join me in welcoming a strong advocate for teachers, children, and learning environments in Utah, Craig Carter.
Thank you, Tracy. As Tracy mentioned, my name is Craig Carter, and I've been asked to give a brief overview of our district and a little bit about us, and then we'll move on to more of the technical discussion. So Davis School District is one of 41 districts in the state. Our district office is located in Farmington, Utah. It's about 20 miles north of Salt Lake City. We are a growing district. We grow between 800 and 1,000 students a year because of really we serve as a bedroom community to Salt Lake, and there's a lot of home construction and other things going on in the district. We have about 72,000 students in our district, 8,000 staff members, 102 buildings, of which 91 of those are schools, 11 million square feet of interior space that we maintain, and just under 2,100 acres of ball fields and playgrounds that we also maintain throughout the district. Our vision statement at the district is one that we've had for a number of years, and every employee could recount this to anyone who would ask. It's learning first. We believe all of our decisions have to focus on the classroom and how it impacts what takes place in the classroom. And one of our strong tenets that we have in our district is the fact that we believe all of our employees are educators. It's just not the classroom folks. If it wasn't for our support folks, what happens in the classroom wouldn't happen. And as a result of that, we've seen tremendous strides in some of our graduation rates. We're Our graduation rate is 94% across the district. One area that we're particularly proud of is the improvement we've seen in our subpopulations. Our Hispanic group students are also graduating at a 94% rate. That's an increase of 10 points over the last 5 years. We put a lot of focus in that. We feel that it's paying off. The number of AP tests have grown consistently over the last several years, as well as the number that have AP tests passed. We're currently running at about a 77% pass rate. In addition to that, our ACT scores continue to track about a point higher than the state average, and we continue to put emphasis on that. One of the things that we pride ourselves in, and we found it to be very successful, is our cross-functional collaboration teams that we have. There are several throughout the district. The slide before you identifies 3 of those teams that particularly impact our organization: the Facilities Management Group, the Energy Committee meeting, and the Support Service Leadership. All of those groups meet monthly. Facility management involves a large cross-section of departments throughout the district, including our school directors, superintendency, to evaluate and plan construction projects and also improvements to buildings as they're needed, and try to prioritize those the best we can. We found that to be a very successful opportunity so that everybody's voice is heard and is a part of that decision. The Energy Committee, we'll talk a little bit more specifically on the improvements of that. That's been a relatively recent committee, probably in the last 5 to 10 years, but we've seen tremendous benefit from that in energy savings and the way that we can affect the energy consumption that we have with the growing spaces that we're taking on. One of the things that we're running into, and I assume most of your districts are the same, is a lot of our support leaders throughout the district are individuals that are promoted from within their organization. And the majority of those folks don't have what we'd consider a strong background in leadership skills and management skills. And so we have our support services leadership monthly, where we try to provide training and skills to help our new managers, our entry-level managers, as well as our veteran managers better prepare and better be able to handle the responsibilities that they have. The next slide talks a little bit about some of our energy savings and resource conservation. Since 2008, we've opened, as you can see, 9 schools, 6 elementary, 2 junior high, and 1 high school. Yet through that time, our energy consumption hasn't changed. It hasn't gone up. And as you can see, our cost per square foot is well below the national average, 76 cents versus $1.20 to $1.50. So we feel very, very good about what we're accomplishing. We have several schools that are net zero. Mr. Turner will talk a little more about those, but 3 elementaries, 1 high school, powered entirely by solar panels. Shauna will talk a little bit about the actual quantitative savings from some of these programs. But just to end my comments, just to reiterate, learning first is what we're about, and everything we do has to focus on the classroom. And we take pride in that and trying to serve our students the best we can. Tracy, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Craig. And, it becomes very clear in the comments that you made why it is your teams are able to be as successful as they are, the commitment that you have to surfacing that kind of leadership and putting it into action, but also the recognition that everything that goes on at the facilities level and at the maintenance level, at the custodial level, contributes to the success that you're having as a school district academically as well. And as a demonstration of the power of that cross-functional teaming, our next presenters are from across the district there in Davis, but very unified in their message and in the work that they do. So I'm going to invite you to join me in welcoming Brian Turner. Brian is the Director of Architectural Services for Davis School District. He's a licensed architect and was recently elevated to the College of Fellows by the American Institute of Architects. He has a bachelor's degree in construction management from Brigham Young University and a master's Bachelor's of Architecture from the University of Utah. He's going to be followed by Dan Martin, who is a licensed commercial mechanical inspector with a background in HVAC and has worked in the Davis School District's maintenance department for 24 years. He's currently the Interior Environment Coordinator, overseeing building maintenance involving HVAC, plumbing, refrigeration, kitchen equipment, appliances, and custodial equipment. And then Dan will be followed by Shauna Cragen. Shauna is the Director of Custodial Services in Davis School District and serves as President of the Utah School Custodial Managers Association. Shauna received the 2018 Outstanding Administrator of the Year Award from the Utah School Employees Association and the Green Cleaning Award for Schools and Universities 2018 Silver Award. So, leading off for the Davis Dream Team, please welcome Brian Turner.
Well, thank you for that. Like I said, my name is Brian Turner, Director of Architectural Services for the district. Probably the best job in the district because I get to design new buildings and watch them grow and become part of the community and serve our students and teachers very well. As going to continue on with some of the things that Mr. Carter talked about, learning first really does drive everything that we do, and especially in our design process. Part of my job is to build new schools, and we usually add a new school at least one school every year or so. And then we also have 91 schools that we have to take care of in different ways. And it becomes a little bit of a challenge in the fact that the new schools get all the latest and greatest technology and features, and we like to try to go back into these existing schools and try to bring them up to the same level that the new schools have. And that's sometimes a challenge. But when we do a new school, we like to use a very collaborative design process, and it's the same regarding whatever type of school it is. If it's an elementary, junior high, or high school, we go through the exact same process. And it's, like I say, it's very collaborative, and we bring in all the different user groups that touch the school, and they, because every group looks at it with a different set of eyes. I mean, teachers look at it one way, and the administrators look at a building another way. Maintenance is totally different from that, and custodial, and everybody kind of has their own set of things that they want to see happen in a building. And so we bring all these people together and kind of go through a blue sky process. We tell them to forget everything you've ever known about an elementary school, for example, and say, if you could do anything you want, if you had a blank sheet of paper, what would this school have? And kind of go through this little bit of a dreaming phase, and where the sky's the limit. Think of anything you want. And then as we talk about it, it's like a gigantic funnel, big at the top and then narrows it when it gets down to the bottom. We take all those ideas and put it through this funnel that filters out the good and the bad or whatever, and until we can kind of come up with some sort of idea that we think we can accomplish. And when we went through this process a few years ago for our elementaries, we ended up with a list of goals. We had about probably 10 of them that were the drivers that drove the design. One of them was actually listed at the very bottom of the list, and it was kind of almost just we'll put it on here, we'll see if we can do it, and that was to come up with a zero energy building. And we had kept it on there and kind of always figured that it might be just a little bit out of our reach because it does involve a little bit more cost. But as we went through the design process and everything came out, it's like it was very reachable with all our different groups that had their input into the goals and of what the buildings were going to be. The thing that happened with that is they all have some sort of a buy-in. So we had a lot of people all on the same page and presented a zero energy option to the Board of Education, kind of fully expecting that it wouldn't go anywhere. And we were surprised. The board went for it and was very supportive of our efforts to do that. And so we were very thrilled. So as Mr. Carter mentioned, we have 3 elementary schools that are actually producing more energy on site than they consume each year. So they're zero energy, but then a little bit more. We have a high school that panels are being installed right now that will help offset a lot of its energy. And then we've got another school that's getting ready to go out to bid that will be a zero energy as well. And wherever possible, that's kind of something that we plan to do. The ways, just really quick, I mean, zero energy is a very big topic. We could probably do a whole webinar just on this. But quickly, the ways to make it happen is we need to bring our energy use of the building way down. And as was mentioned, our district average was 70-something cents, somewhere in there. On these zero energy buildings, we were able to actually get it down to 22 cents or 17 cents. We had a couple of them that performed very well. But by doing that, you have to reduce the electrical load as much as possible. We do LED lighting throughout the buildings. That's probably the biggest saver right there. The lighting is the biggest electrical use in a building anyway, and the LED kind of pretty much cuts that right in half. We do a lot of ground source heat exchange systems where we use heat pumps in the building. We use a thermal air displacement, which helps us keep our fan speeds low and our temperatures. We don't have to cool things as much as some other systems require. Our climate is very conducive to evaporative cooling or IDEC cooling, so we use that a lot here, which is basically a gigantic swamp cooler in the building. Another thing that we do is we use sophisticated building controls to help control our energy, turn things on and off, and not waste energy. And as a result of that, we're able to get those electrical usage way down, which then means our photovoltaic panels that we put on the roof will then compensate that. And even if we couldn't get the panels on the roof, we still have a very energy efficient building that all the money that we save and we don't have to use to heat and cool a building could go right back into the classroom to help teachers or students and those kind of things. So let's say it's something that we're very excited about doing. I'd like to jump back into our collaborative process to design the school, because it is learning first, and so we have to keep in mind that we are designing schools, and what we're doing is here to help our students to learn and our teachers to teach, and it's a building that's going to be in the community for 50 to 75 years. So, we're going to make a pretty good impact in that. Because we are a growing district, we kind of first priority is to basically house the students, put them in a chair behind a desk. Actually, that's kind of, don't use the chairs and desks that much anymore. It's more flexible than that, but we need to house our students first and foremost. Kids today are different, and the education process is different than when I was in school many years ago. Kids today have access to they have access to the whole world. All the information is there just at their fingertips, that phone that they can't put down. So that's something we need to embrace and design into the use of our buildings, ways for them to take advantage of all that. Some of the educational philosophies that we design to is because we are a growing district and we do have a lot of new students moving in, we have to build a little bit larger schools than what would normally be suggested by national averages, where maybe a typical school across the country might be 400 to 500 students. Some of our elementaries get kind of large. We could have up to 900 students in a building. Because money's hard to get and we're usually kind of behind the curve, the kids usually move in before we build a school, so we're trying to catch up. The way we try to compensate for having these large schools is to break them down into small learning communities. So a large school might feel a lot smaller, where the kids kind of work in a group, maybe not have to interact with all the other students in the building and feel that it's maybe a little more intimate for them. The curriculum, and it's kind of driven by society today, kind of the jobs that these kids today aren't going to graduate from high school and then go get a job at the factory or the steel mill and work for 30 years and retire. They got a whole different set of circumstances they're going to be dealing with, and they're coming out and going to work in these very highly collaborative, fast-paced jobs. In fact, a lot of the jobs that they'll eventually end up working in probably haven't even been invented yet. So our curriculum has to help prepare students to work in that kind of environment. We try to incorporate a lot of project-based curriculum where encourage kids to work together in groups, allow different ways for teachers to team teach and work together. So our spaces end up being kind of dynamic and open and very flexible. Probably the flexibility is the biggest thing because we don't know what the future is going to bring, and so we need to be able to adapt to whatever things happen to. So the new schools are fairly easy. Going through the process design. The hard part is going back in and keeping our older schools up to the standards or give them the same amenities that the new schools have. New schools are funded primarily by issuing bonds. They're a little bit tough to get sometimes because you have to go out and ask the voters to allow you to sell them. So we don't do that very often, try to put it off as long as we can. Usually maybe every 4 or 5 years go through that process. Our older buildings, though, we use more of an ongoing funding source, capital outlay that comes in every year. We take a portion of that to go in and do larger maintenance projects, some of these systems replacements and things like that. So the question we always get asked is, how do you decide which school gets the money or which project? And when you have over 90 buildings, that can be tough sometimes. So probably about 20 years ago, we created a facility assessment, which is basically just a large database of all our buildings and all the different components that are in them. And we have the ability to be able to sort that and rank different schools and decide, gives us a way to look at that and take some of the favoritism out. The last thing we want to be accused of that we're playing favorites, that we like this community better than that community or whatever. So we try to take the guesswork out of it as much as possible. And so this facility assessment has, like I said, it's evolved. We've done it in-house and started off a little more simple and has really worked itself into a much more sophisticated database. And kind of since about 2010 has been in the format that we have now, which we find is very useful. We're improving it all the time. This is a living, breathing document that's constantly being updated and tweaked a little bit. A lot of the data that went into it has been gathered over the years, primarily by sending out surveys to the different schools and let them rate their buildings in different areas. We also use our maintenance people. We have very good maintenance staff with a lot of people that have a lot of experience, and they just know the inside and out of all our buildings. And so we try to get into their head and pull all that information out and put it down on paper. A lot of it's also gathered by just observations, going around visiting the buildings and updating it that way. So like I say, it's a large database. We have all the schools listed in one column, and we have all the different building components broken up in another one. So for instance, we can look at parking lots. We can look at the adequacy of the drop-off, what they have, or the condition of the asphalt. We can look at windows of a school, to determine what the condition of those are. Restrooms is one, flooring, carpeting, wood floors, those kind of things, and HVAC. Those are pretty easy for us to identify and keep track of because they're very visible and easy to see. Some of the other things that we put in, because we're a facilities group, none of us are teachers or have that education background, but we want to know how well does a classroom support a teacher to be able to teach the curriculum that they're asked to teach. We want to know from a teacher, can you adequately control the temperature of your classroom? And every time we ask that, we always get no, they can't, because you never make everybody happy with the temperature control. And then we also ask them if you got enough storage space. And again, that answer always comes back no, because we'll never have enough to keep everybody happy there. But at least that's good to know for us. So this facility assessment really becomes a very valuable tool when it comes to time to start working on projects. And so with this capital outlay money that we have that comes in every year, we might one year target different areas in the building and say, for instance, a couple of years ago, we tried to upgrade several restrooms. And so we went to the facility assessment and sorted all the schools based on restrooms. This picture is the screenshot of what the facility assessment looks like, and you need to envision that it goes on for many more screens to the right and also down at the bottom. Each different data point is given a score of 1 to 4, 1 being poor, 4 being very good, and then 2 or 3 somewhere in between. So when we were looking at renovating restrooms, we went to the restroom category and we sorted them according to that. We had a list of probably 10 to 12 schools that had very poor restrooms, which ended up being more schools than we had money to do the project. So then that meant we needed to do a little bit more sorting within the facilities management group. And so by doing that, we relied very much on our custodial group and our maintenance group to go out, and we looked at those restrooms one by one, and that sorted that group into the ones that were the very worst, which we were able to make a construction project and correct those. Then as that project was done, then the score gets changed from a 1 to a 4, and they'll continue to keep working on taking care of the very poor items and working to get rid of all those. Of course, that will never happen because 4s turn to 3s, 3s turn to 2s, and 2s turn to 1. And a lot of times you'll get a new principal come to a building and they'll feel like everything is terrible condition, and we can take the facility assessment and sort it and show them that it might be bad, but you're maybe not the worst that we have. We've always got somebody worse than they do. We're in the process of updating our facility assessment again. About every 4 years or so, we'll send out surveys. We plan to do a little bit different this time, which will kind of maybe change the way our facility assessment looks when we get the data back. But we're going to send a survey out to the school. We'd like the staff to rate certain areas that we feel like they can rate. We'll send them out to our maintenance people and custodial and have them rate certain areas that they're proficient at rating. And then we're also going to send a group out to parents. And we've asked for parental input before and probably didn't get very much, but this is going to be one that we really specifically go out to see what our community thinks of our buildings. And so kind of excited to see what we get with that. But all this, like I say, is a great way for us to record and track the condition of our buildings and keep it going and not lose that information that we've had. And with that, then I think it's probably time for me to turn it over to Dan Martin.
Hi, everyone. Here at Davis School District Maintenance Department, we have 130 full-time employees who receive approximately 30,000 work orders annually for everything from HVAC, grounds, electrical, plumbing, cabinets, roofing, painting, and everything else you can imagine has to do with a school building or property. My current position, I'm the Interior Environment Coordinator for maintenance. My team consists of technicians in our HVAC department, plumbing, refrigeration, kitchen equipment, appliances, and custodial equipment repair. Speaking on the maintenance side of things, when trying to provide an atmosphere where students can learn and teachers can teach, preventative maintenance is key in keeping a building clean, comfortable, and operating correctly. A little preventative maintenance can not only save a large amount of money, but it prevents many headaches as well. It seems like a simple, basic concept, but it seems like it's always overlooked. For example, every time a component of an HVAC system goes down, it directly affects the school's learning environment and creates an emergency situation where people have to scramble to get to back online as soon as possible. As big as our district is and as many buildings we have, that could end up being a lot of headaches. So if you can keep these system breakdowns and shutdowns to a minimum, it makes for less emergency situations, a more consistent, stable learning environment, and of course, less headaches. Pretty common sense. All of our technicians do a fantastic job and are constantly trying to balance preventative maintenance with the emergency work orders they're called in daily throughout our district. Dealing with indoor air quality, we have a broad range of HVAC systems ranging from older steam heating systems to newer systems like geothermal heat pumps like Brian was talking about, IDEC cooling, VRF systems, which are variable refrigerant flow refrigerant systems. Each system provides its own unique set of challenges, from leaky old pipes and walls and tunnels, electronic components that fail and can be difficult to troubleshoot. Sometimes getting parts for them take a long time.
boilers, chillers, and coils that need cleaning, air handlers, pumps, bearings that need to be greased and serviced, VAV boxes that need adjustment, cooling towers that need cleaning and chemical treatment, air compressors that require constant service, and many, many more. We have other building components that affect indoor air quality, like roofing that might leak and cause issues in the building, or windows where they are broken or the seals are worn out, which all affect the building envelope. There's an amazing amount of maintenance required to keep a school running correctly. As mentioned by Craig, the Davis School District continues to grow, building new additions and new buildings across Davis County, the goal of learning first. Lately, the focus has been to finish upgrading all the older buildings to make sure every classroom has the cooling provided to be a comfortable learning environment. All of this has added a substantial amount of equipment and workload for our existing maintenance personnel to keep running. We've been trying to find different new ways to use technology to stay organized and efficient to help us bridge that gap between the added workload and the existing personnel. We use a work order system called Encore that you can see on your screen to create and track all the maintenance we do in each building. If a school has a problem or a need, they call into our call center, and the call center generates a work order. Our call center people do a great job of prioritizing if it's an emergency and routing the work order to the correct department for the issue. That first step just helps minimize the waste of time, and so it's not sent to the wrong shop to investigate, or we don't pull a crew off of something they're working on for something that's not an emergency and could have waited another day. That Encore system can also auto-generate annual preventative work orders to help us keep track of the maintenance needed in our different buildings. When on site, our technicians can either call into an automated call-in or out system, or they use an app on their phone to check in and out on the work orders, which allows us to keep track of the man-hours spent on each work order. When the technician completes their work order, they enter in the work they did, any other comments, and the list of parts they used. This goes into an Encore database, and we keep that record of all the work performed in every building. We can later use this data to update our facility assessment that Brian was talking about. It helps us keep track of equipment that's reaching its end of life. It gives us direction on what upgrades are needed in the near future. Even our grounds department has incorporated technology into their sprinkler systems. They use a system called Weather Track, and it monitors the weather and decides what the different areas and landscapes on the property need to be watered based on sun exposure and soil type. This system had a 19-month payback with an annual cost savings of over $57,000, and it saves 17 million gallons of water every year. We do our best to put in systems that are reliable and energy efficient, like Brian was talking about, but also systems that have built-in redundancy and can easily be repaired and maintained. Our district's constantly upgrading systems for improved performance, longevity, and efficiency with a limited budget, as all the districts have. Upgrading our control system's been another big key of our success. We started out with a system called iNet, but now we are currently converting buildings over to a web-based system called StructureWare. Our technicians can use this system, and they can access it with tablets and smartphones. They can check the system, troubleshoot when issues arise. We can use it remotely to make changes to a building off-site. So if someone calls me, I can get on my phone or my tablet and try to band-aid an issue until we can get there. Our custodians can use these, and they can see the StructureWare for their individual building, which allows them to monitor classroom temps and catch issues before they arise as well. Each year, we continue to convert these older pneumatic air-driven systems to electronic, and that has improved our building performance, comfort, and indoor air quality drastically. Midnight raids. Years ago, our HVAC technicians implemented what has now been termed the midnight raids, and they do that before the start of every school year. And they just come in the early AM hours to check all those older pneumatic systems to ensure that we're getting as much early morning free outside air cooling that we can get. They ensure all the fans are running, all the outside and return dampers are operating correctly, filters have been changed, and just overall view of the system in those early mornings. As a district, our goal is to eventually have everything electronic, so as those older systems are replaced, the need for those midnight raids will go away, and I guess that week these guys will get more sleep. But it's just another way that shows our maintenance personnel have adapted and gone above and beyond to ensure the best environment for the students to learn each year. As technology changes so fast, updated training for our technicians is another key component to keep our buildings running properly. I can't emphasize how important this is, especially with the teams I work in, where most of them are technical equipment. Technical training improves troubleshooting, it saves money, it reduces the equipment downtime, and is a necessary tool in that technician's tool bag in this fast-changing technical world we're living in. We try to send technicians to multiple local trainings per year, and as new equipment is installed, we try and have on-site trainings with those shops to make sure everybody's familiar with the equipment and is all on the same page on how it works. I even send out a weekly email, I call it the education email, to my entire team each week that explains a specific plumbing, mechanical, or fuel gas code change or update. It only takes them a couple of minutes to read it each week, but it's helped keep them current with the code changes that are always ongoing. So to close, as I said before, a little preventative maintenance goes a long way to saving money and maintaining a healthy building and a great learning environment to promote learning first. I'll turn it over to Sean.
Thanks, Dan. So along the same lines, this is a picture of our boiler report. It's the building systems checklist, but affectionately referred to as the boiler report here. So this is a custom report that is created for every single one of our schools, and it is specific to the equipment at that facility. It's just our way of being proactive and protecting the learning environment. So once a month, our custodians go through and they document everything on this, send it over to the Custodial Services Administration team, and then we submit to our maintenance department digitally. It gives us the ability to look at issues early that may cause problems. Also at the site level, our custodians, because they're so experienced with this equipment, they know what the normal parameters are. So when they're checking something, if there's something really concerning, they have the ability to just call our maintenance department and get a quick follow-up. So this just gives you an example of some of the things that we do at one school on this building systems checklist. And I'm not going to read it all to you, but just to give you an example, twice daily we check the central heat pump pressure and temperature. We check the boiler temperature, the walk-in fridge and freezer temperature. Weekly, we check the heat pump operation. We're looking for bearing noises, leaks, making sure that the pressure is correct. We check the hot water pumps, looking for broken couplers or anything that's concerning, and we also check the building fans. So as you've heard from my colleagues, in Davis, everything really evolves around supporting the mission of learning first, and custodial is no exception to that. So anytime we're looking at a new process or a new machine or a new consumable, we always look at the impact that it's going to have on the education environment. One example of this is we're looking at an anaerobic digestion system, and we are trying to work out a way to incorporate learning opportunities for the students, being a partner with our science department so that they really have the opportunity to learn from that program, as well as it being a better financial and environmental decision for our district. Also in custodial, we are the ones that change our HVAC filters and also write the specifications for those filters. So everyone knows filtration is very important, but in Utah, we are kind of unlucky. We are surrounded by mountains, so if we create it, we keep it, and also the jet streams push pollution into us. So the filtration that we use is extremely important to improve the indoor air quality in our schools. We use a MERV 8A filter, and it is about 3 times the cost of a conventional filter. However, a conventional filter needs to be replaced quarterly, where this is annually. And now that we're several years into this program, we've been able to do a cost analysis. The labor savings is more than enough to cover the increased cost of the filter. And then, of course, we've improved the indoor air quality, which directly affects education. So one key factor in preventative maintenance or any good program is quality staffing. And we really want employees that are well trained, that have great morale, and really understand the impact that they have on students and education every day. Davis School District focuses on recruiting the best of the best. We spend a tremendous amount of time and energy on employee recruitment. To give you an example, this picture on the left is the leaders from nutrition services, custodial services, transportation, and distribution. We attend a lot of job fairs together, of course, looking for employees in our divisions, but also looking for teachers, looking for computer technicians, looking for skilled maintenance workers, really looking for anyone who wants to have a positive impact on student learning. This picture on the right, we focus a lot on advertising as well. Because we are such a large district, we have our own distribution center. We have 10 distribution trucks, and we use those to draw in potential candidates. You can see here our theme for the support services department is Be a Hero to Kids. And that really goes along with what Craig Carter was saying. You know, we really feel that everybody that works for Davis School District is an educator regardless of your role, and you really have an impact on children. So I'm going to give you an example of my department, then, now, and what's coming up. And I'd like to preface this with DSD is a wonderful employer. They have a great reputation and they have great staffing. However, 4 years ago, when I became the director of custodial services was the one department in Davis that really had a tremendous amount of turnover. We had really high disciplinary actions. And when I was brought in 4 years ago, I was tasked to repair that. So one of the first steps that I took in doing that was looking at the training that we're providing for our employees. We were providing 4 hours of training for our full-time employees and 2 hours of training for our part-time employees annually, and that was all that they received. You cannot expect your employees to know their job and to do a great job if you're not spending the time to train them. So we have put in place newsletters that go out monthly. We have great online resources, checklists that are available to our custodians. We do a phenomenal professional development day, 8 hours for full-time employees, 4 hours for part-time employees. We do quarterly trainings for our heads that they take back and provide that information to the rest of their group. We're in the process of building modules specific for each job. So an elementary head would have 10 modules that were specific to their career, or a high school assistant would have 11 modules that were specific to them, and just making them successful. We're also in the process of building a video library that's held on a third-party server. The intention of that is when a custodian is out on site, if they are doing something that they don't do frequently and they're struggling, trying to remember the correct way to do it, they can bring up their smart device, bring up the video, watch a quick 2-minute, 4-minute video, and then complete the task correctly. Just to give you an idea of what I mean by 4 years ago, custodial services was in trouble. In June of 2014, about 17% of our positions were open. We would fill them, and then we would have turnover, and those people would leave. We were filling those positions with sub-employees, but of course, you know, you get a different quality of service with those people than you do with your permanent employees. As of this month, we are at less than 1% of our positions that are open. And just to give you an idea of some of the things that we've done to change those things, of course, changing the training program had a huge impact. You can't expect people to know what they don't know. And as a leader, it's your job to make sure that they have the skills to do their job. Another thing that we've done is the Custodial Appreciation Week. Once a year, we have a week where the kids will write notes to the custodians, or they'll put on the marquee how much they appreciate the custodial staff. I talked about the improved resources. I talked about, you know, training your employees for success. Also, I think there's a lot of value in knowing your employees. I have 665 permanent employees and about 1,000 subs, and I really spend a lot of time trying to make sure that I know each one of them. The 1,000 is very difficult. The 665 I'm pretty good at, but I like to be able to walk down a school hall and see a custodian and look up and say, you know, hi, Jordan, how are you? I hope you're having a good day. I think it makes them feel valued when they know that they as individuals are important to you. So staffing communication, all of the departments in Davis School District really use a lot of the same mediums. Each of our departments have newsletters. We each have a department website. We do direct emails from our departments as well as from the district as a whole. Our board meeting, they create this wonderful newsletter called the Board Brief that's available to everybody. Our district homepage just has a plethora of information. As an example, if a community member ever wanted to know where we were on a bond project, they could go into our website and would know if that project was complete or exactly where it was in the process. We do the leadership meetings like Craig Carter was talking about, where we really disseminate a lot of the information from our superintendency to everyone, so that whether you're in curriculum or whether you're in support services, we're all on the same page, all pushing for the same goals. So this is our value proposition. And of course, our target population is the student, staff, and our community. It took the time to research and implement these changes. And these changes have been, decades in process, but some of the things we've done to accomplish those are training, facility assessments, feedback, and data collection. We have been able to save a tremendous amount of energy. We have wonderful smart designs, a great preventative maintenance program. We've been able to reduce our chemicals in schools, implement a board-backed integrated pest management program. We've changed a lot of our conventional products for healthier products. And the outcomes of that, of course, are reduced absenteeism, reduced indoor air quality complaints, reduced exposure to potentially harmful chemicals, energy savings and water savings, retention of our staff, and improved morale. And that is about $4,200,000 in cost savings for Davis School District annually. And just to give you an idea of how that breaks down, $4 million of that is specifically energy costs. And that is attributable, honestly, to everybody. Our board for backing our zero energy designs, our architectural department for having the energy to really invest in that and make sure that they work well, our maintenance department for all of the changes that they've done, even our teachers, for running little competitions about who can save the most energy by competing with classrooms in the same school or other schools. So the goal of our program is to create the healthiest, safest, and most environmentally friendly schools possible that support our mission of learning first. And with that, I would just like to say that Davis is really thankful for the opportunity to share a little bit about Davis School District with the EPA and all those that are listening. So thank you.
And thanks to everyone on the Davis team for your presentation. And, really, this has been how we have really brought, how you really bring the IAQ Preventive Maintenance Plan to life. We talk a lot about what that plan looks like, but it really helps to have a school district to put a face on it. And so, we talk about those 4 steps for developing and implementing an indoor air quality preventive maintenance plan. And what you heard from Davis was how they're using successful approaches and actions across the board for all of these steps that you see here. And although the steps are depicted in a linear fashion, they really are much more just kind of iterative and interconnected. So we want to take a quick look at how the IAQ Tools for Schools resources can help you start or improve your indoor air quality maintenance program. So we labeled it step 1, but gaining buy-in across the board for your indoor air quality preventive maintenance program is an ongoing effort. And establishing goals is really critical for recruiting others and getting folks on board. So one way to ensure broad-based support is to clearly and intentionally align the goals of your plan with the goals and the core mission of the district, and to be specific about how what you do in your work contributes to achieving those goals. So one of the best ways to do that is by developing a value proposition like you saw from Davis. This is a simple and powerful statement of the return on investment that your program is going to provide. So take a lesson from Davis School District and use the exact language that has meaning for the district as a context for explaining your program. In their case, it's learning first. And it doesn't hurt that they can demonstrate a $4 million cost savings. So be sure to tout your assets. This is no time to be humble, no time to be shy. You really want to be expressing what it is you bring to the district through this work. And we've developed this worksheet to help you develop your value proposition for your program so that you can more easily speak that language. So when it comes to developing the specifics of your indoor air quality preventive maintenance plan, there are several essential elements to include to help you design a plan that is effective, comprehensive, and predictive. The Indoor Air Quality Tools for Schools kit provides abundant support for conducting walkthrough assessments to address specific indoor air quality issues. So during the Davis presentation, the school district shared some of the extraordinary methods they use to inventory, maintain, and service equipment, and to manage processes and procedures effectively. like their facilities assessment survey, which is just an amazing tool to have, their electronic job sheets, and the building systems checklist or the boiler report. You may or may not have those same features within your district, but you can use the Indoor Air Quality Tools for Schools kit and the mobile app and the soon-to-be-released preventive maintenance guidance and checklist as a basis for tailoring products that meet the specific needs of your district. So there is a reason that staffing and communications forms the foundation for indoor air quality preventive maintenance. A committed interdisciplinary team of valued professionals is necessary at every step of the way, from the creation of the plan through its execution, review, and the redesign. You heard how Davis talked about how they revisit that plan often to update it. The Coordinator's Guide of the Indoor Air Quality Tools for Schools kit is a valuable resource to use to help you to identify the members that you need to form a solid team and the communication tools and strategies to get them focused and motivated. So as we heard from Davis, one of the best ways to keep staff motivated and committed is with training and recognition. Train them, recognize them, show that what they're doing has value. In addition to your own in-house training, we encourage you to support your team members to seek additional professional development opportunities like the ones that we provide at EPA through our IAQ professional training webinar series. You can always launch your training program from there. And finally, evaluate early and often. Use the strategies detailed in the Evaluate Key Driver to institute procedures that allow you to track and measure the results of your activities, to analyze those results, and to document and communicate your success to others. You can use the Indoor Air Quality Tools for Schools mobile app to collect data from staff members across the district in real time and use that documentation to develop your plan for action. So using the Indoor Air Quality Tools for Schools kit, the framework and the mobile app as the foundational components of developing an indoor air quality preventive maintenance plan that creates clean, safe, healthy learning environments for your school district. I also want to let you know that we have a number of other resources to help you manage and balance indoor air quality, preventive maintenance, and energy efficiency for the entire life cycle of the school building, from design and construction through ongoing daily maintenance to renovation and upgrades. All of these resources, tools, and guidance are or soon will be available on EPA's IAQ in Schools website. That's at www.epa.gov/IAQ-schools. And please visit our website to access all of our other tools and materials. Additionally, our SHIELD network partner, the Association for Learning Environments, is making it possible for you to receive one learning unit toward the American Institute of Architects' Health, Safety, and Welfare Sustainable Design Standards. Please just send your full name, AIA number, the name of the webinar, and email address to iaqschools@epa.gov. Then my final request for you as you take your next action steps, please fill out the webinar evaluation form to help us better serve and support your needs. We read every evaluation and we respond to what we see there. It is a real thing, so please do it. At the end of the evaluation, please access your personalized certificate of completion and display it as a demonstration of your commitment to take action for clean, safe, and healthy school learning indoor environments. So thank you for attending this webinar. That concludes the presentation portion of the webinar, but please continue to stay on the line for Q&A with our speakers. So Craig, Dan, Brian, Shauna, thank you so much for your presentations, and we're excited to be in a little question and answer dialogue with you. A general question has come in about the way that you guys operate, because it's not like the way that a lot of other districts do. So let's talk a little bit about getting teams sort of on board with preventive maintenance. It can't be easy. What advice do you have there in the district for gaining buy-in across departments, for being able to replicate what we're seeing with what you're doing with the success of your cross-department communication and teamwork?
Okay, so this is Shauna, and I would say the most important part for getting buy-in is to be able to prove how it impacts education, and then also to be able to quantify the financial end of that. Your business administrator is always going to want to know financially how that works out. Let's see if anybody else has anything to say.
This is Craig. Even in my life before the district, we had a lot of success in the private sector with cross-functional teams and getting input from various users. And what we've found is that because we ask the input, that there's some value, they feel valued, and that they feel like their skills are being used to benefit everybody in the district. So it takes a lot of work, because you're talking about some big groups in some cases, but we have found that the work itself is worth that effort, and the outcomes are worth that effort.
Yeah, I think it's definitely true and demonstrative in what we see there. And you talked about two things there, Shauna, in terms of the connection to educational outcomes and the recognition of that, as well as that financial bottom line. And I see you doing a lot of things to be able to quantify the impact that you're having cost-wise. And that is, that quantitative entity, while it can be elusive and difficult, it is a very doable thing, because you've got hard data there. On the other side, when I see the success that you have in the district, with everyone embracing the idea of learning first, and I'm sure it just comes naturally now, it's in the fabric of how you operate. But can you talk a little bit about what that looks like at an operational level? How is it that you kind of make something that seems like it's on the soft side of connecting to educational outcomes, something like getting mission driven? How do you see it operationalized in a way that makes it so thoroughly a part of everything that happens across the board in the district there? What kinds of actions make that happen?
I think it's a lot of different factors that play into it. I know that in custodial services, some of the ways that we really get all of our custodians to understand that they have an impact on education is every training that we do, we reiterate that. Every subject that they're taught, they're not just taught technical information. When they do their professional development day once a year, they go to a suicide prevention class, because they are just as likely to be able to help a student that's struggling with suicide as a teacher or an administrator. They go through child abuse prevention. They are just as likely to be the one that sees something that's concerning and able to report that. They really know every day that everything that they do affects the learning environment. And I know that that's something that's also reinforced in our maintenance department. It's like Dan said, they really like the opportunity when someone calls in a job sheet, that they can immediately know, is this urgent? Do we need to go off of something that we're working on right now to protect the learning environment? Or is this something that we can wait just a little bit in? But every one of the technicians in maintenance, every one of the people that works for our architectural services department, we really understand that we are here for education. It is so ingrained in our culture. Every person that comes in, every bus driver, every nutrition services worker, every teacher's aide, every secretary, we are all here ultimately for the students.
Well, I think that kind of commitment is something that, school districts across the country are just clamoring to have people committed at that level. And providing the kind of leadership training that you do, and recognizing that that training folks is not just about the job that they do, but the person that you want them to be when they're there, and you guys definitely do that there. So taking a look at sort of technically how you get things done, we saw a lot of different systems that you use in all of your departments, especially electronic systems. And one of the things that that we promote as a part of putting together an effective preventive maintenance plan is around the computerized maintenance systems. And you have a number of computerized systems that you use there. And we know that there are plenty of options, and increasingly more and more options for, for doing work orders, for maintaining your facilities, for doing those building assessments. And we don't want to necessarily talk about, this product over that product, but we do want to have a better understanding of the kind of criteria that you use when you're selecting these products, these computerized supports and electronic supports to what you do. You were just talking about how you're going to be switching from one system to a different system. What are some of the things that you consider and the criteria you use when you're putting an electronic support system in place for your work?
The electronic system that we use, this is Dan, by the way, the structureware system that we actually use can be programmed by our in-house IT guys. So that's kind of the baseline of what we put in. Something they can program, something they can set up and adjust for individual needs. I mean, once a building is engineered, we get it working, things change, buildings change, so they're able to adapt to that building and make changes. So that's kind of the baseline of the actual control system. As far as the components, as we've kind of talked about, a big part of it's energy efficiency. Technology is constantly changing, so we're always trying to put in components that are very reliable and very efficient. If we've tried a product and we've had multiple problems with it, we'll steer a different direction just because it's a school, we can't have it go down, we have to keep it running. As far as controls, like I said, the control system, that's probably the baseline, is just that structureware system that we're already integrating across the whole district.
This is Craig. One of the advantages we have, Dan alluded to it, is most of our software and most of the applications we use are written in-house, and so they're designed by the users themselves. And so Dan and his folks will sit down with our IT people and say, here's the functionality we need, this is what we want it to do. And then we have a programming team that will go ahead and develop that. So that's one advantage that we have. So most of what we have is not third-party software, it's in-house.
But Craig, while we're on that, I have to tell you, so my first introduction to Davis School District was through Shauna Cragen and seeing her presenting on your award-winning green cleaning program that you have in Davis. And our experience at EPA, in the Indoor Environments Division and in the Tools for Schools program has been, when we see a school district that is excelling and is winning awards in facilities, that is something that is not just relegated to the facilities section of that district. There's something that runs, there's an excellence that's running throughout that district. So when I saw Shauna winning this award for green cleaning, I went and investigated the district a little bit, and that's when I discovered your facilities assessment survey. And I gotta say, we were blown away. We were like, this is it. It was sort of like, the clouds parted. This was like the holy grail of preventive maintenance. And when I see it now and you say it's like sort of 20 years old, can you just talk a little bit more about the evolution of that? If you have people who are starting out a preventive maintenance program or are trying to figure out how to get a handle on, on their facilities assessment in a way that you have that allows you to not just have a snapshot of what's happening at any given time, but to be able to use that as a communications mechanism, as an education mechanism, as a crystal ball to figure out what to do in the future. Can you just talk about, a little bit about how it came to be, some of the key milestones in its evolution, and some of the best benefits you feel like you're reaping from that survey now?
This is Brian talking now. The evolution of the facility assessment was probably, I think it was about 20 years ago. Me and my immediate supervisor went to back then it was called CEFP, and some other educational things, and facility assessments for some reason for a couple of years was a really big topic. And so we went to several of these conferences, and we attended, between the two of us, every one of these different things that we could. And as we were flying back, I think the last one we attended was on the East Coast, so we're on the airplane, fairly long ride. Not sitting by each other on the plane, but we were both actually developing kind of our ideas of everything that we saw. We got together and compared notes. It was pretty similar. We went through and interviewed several different companies that offer software, pre-written software for that. But what we felt like, their programs mostly were written for large real estate management companies or something like that. The way they would go about assigning money to projects and even developing projects was just totally different than the way our system worked. And so none of them really ever seemed to fit with us. We also didn't want to hire a group to come in and go through all our buildings and give us a report that just sat on a shelf and never got used. So what we ended up developing is pretty well was all done using Excel spreadsheets, but it's what we wanted to know. When we first started out, we tried to catalog all the different items that were in a building, and got down the road a little ways with that, and then realized, why do we care on some of these things? And so, like I say, so it's been an evolving process all along. We've taken things out, we've added things, but I think the biggest benefit is that it's always alive and breathing, and can be changed, in any moment. We go out and visit a school, we can come back and we can change different things. It's just because it changes all the time, it's difficult. We'll get schools that want a copy of it, which we can't give them a copy of the live, but we can kind of give them a snapshot in time of how their building stacks up. But then, it's not worth a whole lot if they can't compare it to the other buildings. And so, hope that answered the question.
Oh, no, it certainly more than answers the question. So I think one of the things with learning first and using that as a basis for the way that you operate in your facilities, from construction to maintenance to custodial, so you have been very successful in turning those staff into educators, giving them an educator mind. Let's talk about the other way around. We have a question here about what is the most effective way to help educators become more compliant with your practices and to stop doing things like, spraying pesticides on desks or bringing in outside materials. How do you help the educators be more compliant with your preventive maintenance and indoor air quality plans, the same way that you're helping your staff to be more educators? How does it work the other way around?
Okay, so this is Shauna, and whoever wrote that question, we're all chuckling because everybody has the same challenges. For Davis, I think a big part of it, honestly, is just education. We sometimes are the ones educating the educators, and that's okay. Specifically with the integrated pest management program, you're just completely changing their mindset. You're taking the way that they've operated their whole life, which is you see a pest, you spray a pesticide, and you're telling them we're no longer going to do this. So it's honestly, there's just a learning curve, explaining to them, the physical, mechanical mechanisms of keeping pests out, what we need to do to create a culture so that pests don't want to come in. It really is just education. And I've spent a lot of time not only educating them about why we're doing IPM, not only the law, not only how it impacts indoor air quality, how it affects the health of our students and our staff, but also really breaking into the idea that it's not necessary. A lot of these pests, we're putting down a pesticide that has a life cycle in their active chemicals of 99 years, and it's killing a pest that has a life cycle of 5 days. It doesn't make sense. So a lot of times I find it's just communication. We were lucky enough to have our board ratify our IPM policy. So it is not only IPM is law, everybody knows that, but it's also a policy that's backed by our board. So if we have a situation where we do have a teacher that's decided, they don't want to follow the rules or do what they're supposed to do, and they brought in a pesticide from home, I have the ability to go to that school and talk with their administrator and remove the pesticide from the school before it's sprayed there. So I think, honestly, it's just about educating the educators on why we're making the decisions we are, and that it really is for the intention of protecting the students and the staff.
Yes, I definitely heard the strong educational component there. The other thing that I heard there, which is another theme that runs throughout the success of your district, is the ability that you have had to bring your board on board with you and to institutionalize policies and set them in action with board support. And I think having those strong plans in place for what you do helps to make that happen. And and when you talked about for instance, the zero energy or the net zero school building, and how it started out as this sort of blue sky, kind of pie in the sky idea, but you grounded it in a plan, and before you knew it, it was actually achievable, right? And so I'd like you to share a couple of things. One specific question and then one kind of general one. So specifically around zero energy, we have someone who wants to hear more about the IDEC cooling system and how that operates. And in talking about that, if you could also talk about the balance that you achieve between energy efficiency and providing good indoor air quality to support the health of occupants in your buildings. Because often there is this false competition that people create between energy efficiency and indoor air quality that doesn't really have to be there. So if you can talk a little bit more about the systems that you use, especially IDEC in energy, and how you balance out the needs of energy and indoor air quality.
This is Dan. So IDEC is indirect direct evaporative cooling. And so how that system works is we have an air handler that will have a coil inside of it, and that coil is fed from a cooling tower. So we cool the air, we pull the air inside, it hits that coil, and that cooling tower keeps that coil cold, and then it goes through the air handler, and then it hits an evaporative media. The typical swamp cooler section is usually about a foot thick. And so you have the indirect and then you have the direct evaporative cooling, and it goes into the building. So it's extremely efficient because we don't have the electrical cost of refrigeration. So, and you have almost completely full outside air. So we have really good air quality as far as we're not recirculating the same air inside the building. So that helps with brain function, that helps with learning, that helps with everything if you have fresh air coming into your building all the time. And then we use those filters that Shauna talked about that really kind of scrub the air out as we go through that air handler. And can you repeat the second part of that question?
Just how you address the balancing of energy efficiency with the needs that you have to provide, good indoor air quality. You talk about it a little bit even in the example you gave there, but how you make sure that you're being both energy efficient while providing all the levels of ventilation that you need and all the other indoor air quality issues that may arise.
It really just comes down to we put in the most efficient systems we can put in for the time, for the seasons that we use the buildings. We'll sit down as a group of people, and as those groups we talked about, the energy committee and those, and we talk about what system's most effective for those buildings, for the cost, the payback it will be, the use of that building and what it would be, whether it'll be year-round, that kind of thing. And so putting in those high energy efficient systems, then the control system can really integrate with those, and we can remotely tweak them to get the peak efficiency out of each building. The IDEC has been really good, like we talked about a minute ago, about the fresh air and not making schools so stagnant. But we do have other buildings with boilers and chillers, and they'll have a minimum fresh air that they bring in as well. And we monitor CO2 systems on all the air handlers throughout the entire school district. So if those levels get it all high, then we bring in more fresh air into the building to maintain that good air quality that you're talking about.
Well, it's just, again, another example of how connected you all are in the way that you approach everything. And I think it's been a really great example of when we first put the Indoor Quality Tools for Schools kit together, and we talked about putting together those interdisciplinary teams, and we thought at the time, we're like, this is the ideal, and we know that it's going to be a stretch for people, and they may or may not do it. To actually see it happening in a district, that this really is kind of the gold standard for putting together cross-program interdisciplinary teams and seeing the benefit of all of that effort, and being able to actually meet and to talk and to set shared goals and have those shared goals and that shared accountability. So we see the power of that. Is there any other closing, what would be the one thing that you would want people to keep in mind as they move forward with putting forward their own preventive maintenance plans and their own indoor air quality plans? Any last ideas you want to share with your peers out there?
This is Shauna. All I would say, it is well worth the input, the impact that it has on the education environment, the impact that it has on the environment, the impact it has financially. It's well worth the input. One more.
If I can share some Disney-ish comments, what we try to do is just create a little magic every day in our schools for our kids. We feel the work that we do is worth it because we're taking care of them. So whether it's the programs we've discussed today or something else, that's what we're trying to do, is just to take care of these kids.
Well, there is no better statement that we could end on. With that, I will thank the Dream Team at Davis School District, and thank you for all the work you put in today, everything that you presented for your peers, and for bringing a little magic every day. Thank you so much. That concludes the Q&A for our webinar today. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us.